He was standing in the doorway of the exam room, not quite ready to sit down. A proud man, probably mid-70s, wearing a flannel shirt so well worn the collar was soft like suede. He shifted his weight from one leg to the other, cleared his throat, and said something I've heard in 100 different ways over the years. "Doc, I used to sleep straight through the night. Now I'm up 3-4 times, and I'm so tired of feeling like I'm chasing a bathroom instead of living my life." That quiet frustration, that mixture of shame and exhaustion, it sticks with you. You don't forget it, especially when it's avoidable. I'm Dr. Thomas Leighton. For 4 decades, I've listened to men like him, veterans, pipefitters, coaches, grandfathers, all of them strong in spirit, but quietly struggling with a part of the body most of us were never taught to talk about, the prostate. That small gland that becomes a source of such big frustration as we age. And if you're over 60, I want you to hear this, because even if you think you're doing everything right, eating your vegetables, watching your red meat, taking your vitamins, there are still a few foods, often called healthy, that may be quietly stirring up trouble in your body. This isn't about fear, it's about peace, and a chance to change course gently so you can enjoy your days with less urgency and more ease. If this message speaks to you, type 1. If you're unsure, type 0. Either way, thank you for being here with me. Let's start with something that might surprise you: raw broccoli. Now, I know that sounds like nonsense. After all, we've been told since childhood that broccoli is a superfood, and it is in many ways. But here's the rub. When eaten raw, especially in larger amounts, cruciferous vegetables, things like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts can become irritating, not just to your gut, but to your prostate as well. That's because these vegetables contain sulfur-based compounds called glucosinolates. They're powerful, yes, but in an older man with a sensitive digestive tract and a prostate already under pressure, they can be like sandpaper in the gears. They create gas, bloating, abdominal pressure. And when your belly swells, guess what it pushes against? That's right, the bladder. The prostate, all that delicate machinery down low. I've had patients come in saying they feel this constant, dull discomfort, and sometimes the simplest switch from raw to steamed changes everything. See, when you cook these vegetables lightly, just enough to soften the fibers and reduce those sulfur compounds, they become easier on your body, easier to digest, easier to absorb. And they stop putting that hidden pressure on your lower abdomen. A study in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry confirmed this. Steaming preserves the nutrients while taming the rough parts that stir up trouble. So no, I'm not telling you to give up broccoli. Just treat it with care. A plate of lightly steamed vegetables can still be rich in vitamins, full of flavor, and gentle on your prostate. It's not about cutting things out. It's about understanding what your body needs and what it no longer tolerates as easily as it once did. That brings me to the next common culprit, tomatoes. Now this one hits close to home for a lot of men, because we've all heard the praise for lycopene, the antioxidant in tomatoes that's been linked to prostate cancer prevention. And yes, that part is true. But here's what often gets left out. Tomatoes are highly acidic, and when they're concentrated like in tomato paste, pizza sauce, or thick bowls of salsa, they can quietly become irritants. Especially for a man with an enlarged prostate or bladder sensitivity, that acidity can inflame the tissues, increase urgency, and make those nighttime bathroom runs more frequent. I had one gentleman used to love his spaghetti dinners rich and saucy, but he kept waking up every hour, feeling the pressure. We adjusted a few things, eased back on the heavy tomato sauces, swapped in some milder veggies like zucchini or bell peppers, and he came back a month later saying, "Doc, I finally slept 6 hours straight." It's not magic, it's just respect for what your body is trying to tell you. Cooking tomatoes gently can reduce some of that acidity and help your body absorb lycopene better. But even then, moderation matters. Just because something's healthy in small doses doesn't mean more is better. The prostate, much like the man who carries it, appreciates balance. It's not about restriction, it's about paying attention. If you notice more urgency after a tomato-heavy meal, don't ignore it. That's your body speaking up. If you're finding this helpful, or if you're just starting to think differently about your health after 60, consider hitting the subscribe button. That way, you won't miss future insights made just for men like you. Now, while we're on the topic of flavor, let's talk about something most of us associate with good eating spice. Chili peppers, hot sauces, mustard greens, spicy arugula, they light up the tongue, make a bland meal memorable. But they can also be hard on an aging system. That fire you taste? It's from a compound called capsaicin. And while capsaicin does have health benefits, it boosts metabolism, reduces certain types of pain. It can also act as an irritant, particularly to the bladder and prostate. For younger men, the body often absorbs that irritation without issue. But for seniors, where tissues are thinner, more sensitive, and already dealing with inflammation, spice can be a trigger. A study in neurology and urodynamics found that spicy foods can cause bladder spasms, leading to more frequent urges and less control. I've seen it again and again. Men who love their heat, who add jalapenos to every dish, who can't imagine breakfast without hot sauce, end up with restless nights and long walks to the bathroom. I'm not asking you to abandon flavor, just to be aware. Maybe use bell peppers instead of habaneros. Maybe save the hot sauce for Sunday brunch, not every meal. Because a little less heat on the plate can mean a little more peace at night. And believe me, peace is worth protecting. There's another group of foods that often gets overlooked, not because they're spicy or raw, but because they've been part of our meals for generations. Pickled and fermented vegetables. You know, the ones sauerkraut on a hot dog, pickles with a sandwich, maybe even a bit of kimchi if you've gotten adventurous in later years. For some, they're more than food. They're memory. Your mother's canning jars lined up in the pantry. That first crisp bite at a summer picnic. A taste of the old country. But here's the quiet truth. That tangy crunch comes at a cost, and the price is usually paid by your prostate. Most pickled or fermented vegetables are extremely high in sodium. That salt doesn't just stay in your mouth, it seeps into your blood, raises your blood pressure, and forces your body to retain more water. That means your bladder has to work harder, and your prostate, already tender and often enlarged with age, ends up bearing more strain. Studies, including one published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, show a direct link between high sodium intake and worsening urinary symptoms in older adults. The more salt you take in, the more your system tries to flush it out. That means more urgency, more nighttime trips, more discomfort. And here's the part most men miss. It builds up slowly. You may not feel it the first week or even the first month, but over time, that constant exposure to excess salt can wear you down. I had one patient retired machinist who loved his pickled onions, cucumbers, and beets, ate them with lunch every day, but he couldn't figure out why he was waking up 6-7 times a night. We made one change. Swapped those daily pickles for fresh veggies with a little olive oil and vinegar. Within 2 weeks, his sleep had improved. His energy came back. He told me, "Doc, I didn't realize how bad I felt until I stopped feeling bad." That's the power of awareness. It's not about eliminating every jar in your fridge. It's about turning them into occasional treats, not daily staples. If you like that tangy flavor, there are ways to get it without drowning in salt. Homemade versions, where you control the brine. Or fresh salads, with a splash of vinegar and herbs. The key is to remember that your prostate doesn't care how long that pickle's been in the family. It only cares how much pressure it's under. And when we reduce that pressure even slightly, it opens up more than just your bladder. It gives you back moments of rest, comfort, and confidence. Which brings me to one final culprit, and it's one that's found its way into almost every pantry in America. Canned vegetables. Now, on the surface, they seem like a good choice. After all, they're vegetables, right? And for older men trying to eat better, a can of green beans or carrots feels like the easy, affordable solution. But the truth lies behind the label. Most canned vegetables are packed in salty water, a brine designed to keep them shelf-stable. That means you're not just getting fiber and nutrients. You're getting a heavy dose of sodium, preservatives, and sometimes even artificial flavorings. And those additives, while convenient, do your prostate no favors. Excess salt, as we've discussed, leads to fluid retention and increased urinary pressure. But it doesn't stop there. The preservatives used to keep canned goods fresh can trigger low-level inflammation throughout the body, especially in sensitive tissues like the bladder and prostate. Over time, that inflammation adds up, and the very vegetables you thought were helping might actually be making things worse. I've seen it too many times to count. Men who felt proud for eating their veggies, and rightfully so, only to find out those healthy cans were keeping them stuck in a cycle of swelling, urgency, and frustration. The fix isn't hard. Switch to fresh when you can. Or frozen. Many frozen vegetables are picked at peak ripeness and flash frozen without salt or preservatives. They're convenient, nutritious, and far gentler on your system. If canned is your only option, look for labels that say no salt added, or rinse the contents thoroughly under water before cooking. Even that small step can cut down the sodium by 30 to 40%. What matters is awareness. What matters is listening not just to your doctor or the latest health trend, but to your own body. Now, before we close, I want to share something that doesn't come from a medical journal or a nutrition label. It comes from the men I've sat with, shoulder to shoulder, across decades. The men who've aged with grace, not because they avoided every risk, but because they learned to listen. The ones who made peace with the quiet signals their bodies sent them, who didn't wait until things were unbearable before they changed their habits. And if there's one habit I've seen make the biggest difference, it's this. They don't wait. They don't wait to urinate when their bladder says it's time. They don't wait to stretch their legs or get a little movement when their back stiffens. They don't wait to ask questions when something feels off. They respond. And that response, that simple, respectful act of paying attention, can change everything. Research supports it. The National Institutes of Health found that delaying urination can lead to incomplete emptying, more strain on the bladder, and greater risk of infection. Just by responding when your body asks, you reduce stress on the prostate. The same goes for movement. Even walking for 5 minutes every hour improves circulation in the pelvic region, an area most older men unknowingly starve of blood flow as they sit for long periods. One gentleman I remember well, an 82-year-old retired teacher, used to say, "I get up and move not because I have to, but because I want my body to know I'm still with it." That stuck with me. And it reminded me that good health after 60 isn't about perfection. It's about partnership with your body, your habits, your choices. You don't need an expensive supplement to do this. You don't need a complicated routine. You just need to pay attention and respond. Because when you do, the body doesn't punish you. It thanks you with clearer sleep, easier days, and a little more freedom in your step. And here's something I've come to believe. After a lifetime of sitting across from older men in quiet rooms, listening to what most people overlook, the body doesn't want perfection. It wants partnership. It wants you to show up, not to fight it, not to shame it, but to walk alongside it. Like an old friend who's weathered a few storms and still wants the journey to continue. I've lost count of how many times I've heard a man say, "It's too late for me, Doc." And each time, I answer the same way with a soft voice and steady eyes. It's never too late to start treating yourself with respect. That's really what this is about. Not punishment, not fear, but respect. See, when we're young, we think of our bodies like machines: push harder, go longer, sleep later. And for a while, it works. But aging teaches us something more important than strength. It teaches us humility. We begin to notice what we once ignored. The small signals, the quiet aches, the way certain foods don't sit right anymore, or how our sleep isn't as deep as it once was. And the older we get, the more our body depends on us to listen. Not out of fear, but out of care. You wouldn't ignore a friend who called you every day, asking for help. So why do we so often ignore the body when it speaks? I've seen men change their lives by listening. Just listening. One of them was Harold, a railroad man from Kentucky. Big frame, firm handshake, and stubborn as a mule. He told me, "Doc, I've eaten the same way for 50 years. I ain't changing now." But then the nights started getting harder. More bathroom trips, less sleep, and more fear, the kind no one talks about. Fear that maybe, just maybe, this is how it ends, not in drama, but in a slow decline you can't stop. We talked, not about diets or punishment, but about possibilities. About what might happen if he swapped the canned soup for something fresh. If he steamed his vegetables instead of eating them raw. If he cut back on that nightly bowl of pickled okra. He agreed to try. Not everything, just one thing. And that's how it starts for most men, not with overhauls, but with one small decision that leads to the next. A few months later, Harold came back. Lighter in his face, less urgency, sleeping better. "I don't feel perfect," he said, "but I feel present. And that's more than I expected." Present. That's the word that sticks. Because when your body isn't constantly pulling you toward the bathroom or waking you in the middle of the night, you get to actually be in your life again. You get to enjoy the morning coffee without planning your route to the restroom. You get to sit through your granddaughter's recital or your grandson's ball game without distraction. You get to rest, not just sleep. That's the dignity we're trying to protect. And it doesn't come from supplements or secrets. It comes from small, quiet decisions made every day with love, not fear. Maybe tonight, after this message, you'll sit in your chair and ask yourself something simple. What is one small way I can treat my body with more kindness tomorrow? It might be skipping the second helping of spicy chili, or replacing that pickled snack with a few slices of fresh cucumber. Maybe it's taking a short walk instead of collapsing into the recliner right after dinner. You don't have to change everything, but you do have to begin. And maybe the most important part of all this is forgiving yourself for not starting sooner. I've met men who carried guilt like a second skin. They thought because they didn't know better in their 40s, they didn't deserve relief in their 70s. But that's just not true. The body responds to care at any age. It doesn't hold grudges. It just wants your attention. I remember a man named Louis, soft-spoken, wore suspenders, used to be a butcher. He said, "Doc, I feel like I wasted time." And I told him, "Maybe, but you're here now, and that means time hasn't wasted you." So let me say this clearly, to whoever needs to hear it. You haven't missed your chance. Every bite you take, every step you walk, every hour you sleep, it still counts. It still builds towards something better. And the men I've watched improve the most, they're not the ones who follow rigid routines. They're the ones who stay curious, who try, who fall off the wagon, then get back up and say, "All right, let's keep going." There's courage in that. Not the kind you read about in history books, but the quiet kind, the everyday kind. And if this message has stirred something in you, if it's reminded you of how much your health matters, then maybe pass it along. Not with fanfare, but with care. Send it to a brother, a neighbor, a friend who never talks about his prostate, but who you know wakes up 5 times a night. Let him hear that he's not alone, that there's another way. Again, the path forward. And if you'd like more reflections like this made for men our age, without judgment, without hype, consider subscribing. I'll be right here, walking beside you, not as a salesman, but as someone who's seen what can change when a man finally listens. Take care of yourself. You've earned it.